What's going on, everybody? Can't overdo it with another video, and in this one I'm going to be ranking every piece of media that I consumed in the month of May 2025. This is going to be interesting. This is perhaps the most tired I've ever been recording one of these, since I am recording this at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I have not gone to sleep yet. I probably won't. I'm probably just going to pull on that. But anyways, I'm going to be ranking every piece of media that I got through in the month of May 2025. You guys know the drill. It's going to be the same structure as it was for the previous one, so let's get to it. At number 10, the worst piece of media that I got through this month ends up being HellScreen. HellScreen is a Japanese short story by Akutagawa, and it was actually written back in 1918, one of the oldest pieces of media that I've read in recent memory. The gist of this is that it's about this crazy artist named Yoshihide, who is considered one of, if not the best artist in the entire time period, or at least in that land. Yoshihide excels at putting his own experiences onto canvas. What he sees, he can put onto the canvas pretty much as he saw it. So, when he's eventually told to create a painting of hell by the Lord of the Land, he begins ruthlessly torturing others to see different kinds of hellscapes, to get different versions of hell to create this kind of magnum opus, this HellScreen, if you will. Eventually, he tells the Lord that he's got most of it down, but he is missing something. What he needs is to see a woman being burned to death in a carriage. That way he can finish the screen. The Lord agrees, makes sure that he finds a woman who he can burn in a carriage so that Yoshihide can see it so that he can finish the painting. Well, the woman that the Lord chose was actually Yoshihide's daughter. And after completing the HellScreen, which he does finish the HellScreen, Sayori's, yeah, that's rough. This was a very strange read, to be completely honest. Very, very bizarre. The way that it's written is bizarre. The Yoshihide is so bizarre. That's the main word that comes to my mind when I think about this. It's so out there. It's insane. How did somebody think about this and then write this? More importantly, why did somebody, aka me, read this? And that's obviously because of the Ryoshu from Limbus Company. Ryoshu, like the 11 other sinners on the Limbus Company bus, they are actually kind of adaptation. I don't want to say adaptations, I feel like that's a weird word, but they extrapolate a lot from specific source materials, and Ryoshu extrapolates a lot from Yoshihide. So that's my main motivation for reading this. I'm currently reading The Stranger, so hopefully I'll like Marcel more soon too. But I'm really looking forward to Canto 9, and we'll have more to talk about with Limbus Company throughout this list. Now at number 9, and we're going to be talking about a Limbus Company Intervallo here, and we got a couple of them to go through on this list. I did want to just kind of mention this fact. I was going by number before because that made more sense to me, but now I'm just going to go by their names / what I'm going to call them, because I think that's even easier. So we got the PowerScaling Intervallo. You get what you see out of this, right? If you are somebody who cares about power scaling, this is going to be your Project Moon wet dream. If you don't care about power scaling, it's still good, but the main draw is definitely just seeing how the sinners stack up to one another, which is cool in its own right. It's not something that I personally care about a whole lot. That's why I don't really do WIS content for my edits, but it is still cool to see. Seeing how far the sinners have come since the start is really cool as well. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was that Gregor was not put on the list, Mr. Potential Man himself. I found this even more interesting in the following Intervallo and Nocturnal Sweeping, because there's a scene where there's basically this assassin group and some of the sinners come over to Dante's aid, and it's all the people that were at the top of the power scaling plus Gregor. So that, to me, is a not so subtle hint of hey, you should be paying attention to Gregor. We will see Potential Man do be doing potential man things. Oh, and the blue man guy with the glasses or whatever. I looked at his name because, to be completely honest, I forgot what his name was. And then I looked at it. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that on live video. So, no. Moving on to another Intervallo, because at number 8 I have Nocturnal Sweeping. And honestly, I don't have all that much to say about Nocturnal Sweeping. I think that Nocturnal Sweeping did a really good job of leading us into Canto 8. Huitis, my least favorite center as of now, got some actively good content, which was really nice to see. Zichun, I'm probably saying their name wrong too. Zichun was great throughout it, and the battle against the sweepers was just really cool to like actually see. Oh, and Ricardo. Why the fuck was Ricardo back? I did not need Ricardo. I did not need to see him again. I'm sure we'll see him again. But overall, the Intervallo was just the level of quality that I would expect from a not exceptional Intervallo. This is what we call foreshadowing. Moving over to number 7, I have Kono Oto Tomare Season 1. And this one's really weird to discuss because I actually read the manga this month as well, which we'll talk about. But again, I also watched Season 1 of the anime, and I'm currently watching Season 2 of the anime, so expect that in the June video. But regardless, the content that was adapted here, I actually preferred it over the manga. I do think that there's some interesting stuff to note here. I think that part of this, and probably a big part of it, is the fact that I actually have a lot of investment in the characters already. So I was always going to like it more than the manga, I feel like, at least as far as like the content that was covered here. Because the manga, it took me a little bit to actually get into. The anime, I was already into the characters, so the first steps of the story felt a lot smoother this time around. I felt that the main 4 characters, Kudo, Hotsuki Kurata, and Kurisu, were all well handled as far as like adaptation goes. And like I said, I'm currently watching Season 2, so expect that in the next media video. Now moving on to number 6, I've got Spice and Wolf, the remastered version, the anime of course. Spice and Wolf is very slice of life focused. I personally enjoy slice of life. If you don't enjoy slice of life, maybe watch something else. I do think that for being a slice of life, the execution was pretty good on the whole. Every single arc was pretty consistent, but the third arc was definitely my personal favorite. And Hello and Lawrence were both just very solid throughout. The supporting cast with the likes of Nora, Evan, Elsa, they were all pretty good as well. I'm a little bit on the fence about whether or not I want to pick up the light novels or even potentially watch the original anime. Watching the original anime is a probably not. I'd rather just watch the remake. For the light novels, they are actually on my list, but I have like 10 other light novel series in front of it on that list, and I have not read a light novel in quite a hot minute now, so is it on the list? Yes. When will I get to it, dog? I don't fucking know, man. Alright. I want you guys to imagine that you have this idea. Close your eyes. You have this idea to make mosaics for the media that you consumed within a month, because you just consume a lot of media, and you can share this with yourself, a few friends, and then you make a YouTube channel, and eventually decide that you're going to do voiceover content and turn those media mosaics, once meant for the eyes of the few, into the eyes of the many, and then decide that you're going to stay true to the original intention of those mosaics and go over everything, which includes Sakura Bunny Girls 2. Obvious content warning, this is an 18 and up eroge. I thought it was actually really good. I've played a good amount of Winged Cloud games. I've played the entire Sakura Succubus line. Sakura Isekai Adventure, I finished 1. I haven't continued it. I didn't really like it all that much. And then Sakura Bunny Girls, I've read the first 2, and I have, a friend gifted me Sakura Dungeon. Haven't played it yet. Probably will in the future. But Sakura Bunny Girls 2, despite its completely whack title, it's actually pretty solid in my opinion. I think that the OST being in this game is criminal. Guys, there's like fucking hard rock soundtrack in Sakura Bunny Girls. I don't understand. The soundtrack is so good. The general story as well is pretty good. The Arrowgate content itself is good as well. I think that the main four girls in this are all pretty good, and the protagonist doesn't suck. So that's a fucking win, dude. I'll say too that straight up, I think the Sakura Bunny Girls is the most consistent of the Winged Cloud experiences so far. Now, granted, there's 9 Sakura Succubus entries. I've only read 1 Sakura Isekai, so obviously it's gonna be the most consistent just based on that alone. But I do really enjoy Sakura Bunny Girls. I'll be playing the 3rd one if that ever comes out. Now for number 4, and this one is going to turn some heads, not because it's this low, but rather because of what is above it. But at number 4, I have Canto 8, The Surrendered Witnessing from Limbus Company. Now, Canto 8 is actually the very first Canto that I got to experience live as it was coming out, so that's pretty cool. First of all, part 1 was mostly just good, up until the Garion content, which I was so hyped for. I found it so fucking cool how they tied it all the way back to Lobotomy Corp. And, I mean, obviously, I don't think Project Moon had this in mind when they were writing it in the original story, but it's just so cool how it all connects without contradicting itself. I think that's awesome. Part 2 was probably the peak, which is kind of strange for a Canto on paper. I don't think any of the Part 2s have usurped the Part 3s outside of Canto 8. Then you also consider that most of the dungeons in the previous Cantos have not usurped the main stages or the regular stages, and that's the case here, because Part 2 is the dungeon, weirdly enough, this time around. And yeah, the dungeon was peak. Jia Cho was a really interesting antagonistic figure, and really was just goated all around. I really liked pretty much all of his quotes. I enjoyed his fight as well towards the end. Him and Jia Huan dropping out at the end, only for the Sinners to haphazardly dump all their currency onto Zi Chun to make her the next family hierarch, was peak cinema. It was great. Part 3 was still solid. I did struggle against Lei Hung pre-patch, but afterwards it was a fun fight overall. And the Jia Mu encounter at the end was alright. The melee song as well, Chen Chen, it was good. Not my favorite in the game, though. Through patches of Violet, Compass, and Hero, all definitely clear in my opinion. Lin Dayu, though, she was peak. Anytime she was getting focus, she was probably my favorite character that was introduced in Canto 8. Getting to see Hong Lu's growth was cool, but honestly, it didn't really change my impression on him too much in relation to the other Sinners. Which is just to say that he didn't really move up my Sinner list at all. Maybe a spot or 2. But Ryoshu got content in this as well, and it was really great. The scene where her and Hong Lu show their answer to the immortality question was amazing. Loved it. That CG was fucking insane. I also really like that she has this very clear past that is tied to the fingers, but it's also something that we know very little about at the same time. I think that's really cool, and it's a great storytelling device. I look forward to seeing what parts of her past led up to her acting the way that she does within Canto 8. And again, like I said earlier with HellScreen, I'm looking forward to Canto 9. It's going to be super good, I hope. Now for number 3, and this is what I was talking about before, where I said that some people might be turning their heads about why I have this in number 4, and it's because I have this in number 3. At number 3, I have the Warp Train Intervallo. Yep. I have an Intervallo above Canto 8. And now, to be fair, this is the only interval that I have above Canto 8. But yeah, seriously, I got more enjoyment out of this than I did Canto 8. And it's not because Canto 8 is bad, but it's just because this shit was so peak. All right, let's start off here, right? I don't think it's much of a secret. Faust has been my favorite character since basically the start of Limbus Company. I did have Heathcliff and Ishmael above her upon reaching the high that was their Cantos, but after ruminating on it, I decided to put her back on top because I'm genuinely just so fascinated with her character. I'm going to butcher this, but the whole gel shaft concept is really great for me. And I love this idea of her referring to herself in the third person because her own mindset causes her to view herself as just one of many Fausts. And yes, I know it's pronounced Faust, by the way, but I've been saying it this way for almost 300 hours at this point, and I'm not going to change my ways now. Anyways, let's stop talking about Faust and talk about Don Quixote for a quick second. That reveal at the very end when she took off Roshinate, absolute cinema. That shit was so fucking cool. Don't like that? Well, here's the thing. This is the Warp Train Intervallo. I was always going to love this. Warp Train lore is probably my favorite aspect of Library of Ruina outside of the side-by-side journey of our dynamic duo in Roland and Angela. So, to recap, they put my favorite character in Limbus as the forefront in a intervallo about my favorite aspect of Library of Ruina, and just to flex, they had an insane reveal leading into the following canto. And y'all are supposed to tell me this wasn't tailor-made to be peak? Genuinely, I found this so incredible. Seeing Faust try to navigate without relying on Gelshaft was super wholesome and in general just interesting. And the cherry on top to an already peak intervallo, which, yes, I genuinely believe to be the best content in Limbus outside of Cantos 5 through 7. Now for number 2, and the top 2 this go around were definitely close, but I do think that the inconsistency of Kono Oto Tomare was enough to justify it falling just short of being number 1. To be clear, I love Kono Oto Tomare. In fact, literally earlier today, I read chapter 144, which had just come out, and it was peak cinema, as expected. However, it definitely took me a bit to really get hooked on it. I did start liking it more and more as I read, but I don't think I truly saw the vision until chapter 52 with Hotsuki's I finally reached you mom scene, which was amazing. Up to that point, Hiro Kudasu was my favorite character, but Hotsuki started putting up a fight around this time, only to be taken over by Kudo, who is currently my favorite character. In general, the two main romantic pairings are both incredible. In my opinion, I think that the Kudo-Hotsuki pairing is definitely the better written pair, but I personally get more enjoyment out of the Kurisu and Kurata pairing, but maybe that's just Kurisu bias talking, who knows. Straight up, the romantic developments were my personal favorite part of the read, despite the fact that they're not at all the focus for like 80% of the manga. No, this is a music manga, which on paper had me a little iffy. If it's a music manga, I felt as if it wouldn't hit as hard since, well, there's no music in manga. But finding the songs on YouTube and listening to them while reading the chapters is a really unique and genuinely great experience. The journey of pretty much the entire cast is really well told, and seeing it culminate in the newest chapter is fantastic. My thoughts on Kono Oto Tomare are generally pretty similar to how I feel about Karuhana, and I mean that as a very high compliment. In the sense that whilst the main cast are all great and give me that feeling that these characters could genuinely be people, the side cast is almost as good. Now, obviously, there's a big discrepancy, but for being Villager Bee characters, the Villager Bees are really great. And very minor characters are getting their proper due diligence. All in all, Kono Oto Tomare did take a bit to really hook me, but once it did, I could not stop reading it. Number 1, the best piece of media that I consumed this month ends up being Canto 7, The Dream Ending. And first of all, let me just put this out there. I actually preferred Canto 6, the Heartbreaking. It's still my personal favorite canto. Wish I could have put that at number 1 last month, but I couldn't. But Canto 7 here, this wasn't a super strong debate, to be honest, between this and Kono Oto. Anyways, let's start it. For the first 6 cantos of Olympus Company, I did not like Don Quixote. I found her annoying and honestly just a nuisance throughout. Throughout pretty much every scene she was a part of. However, naturally, as they say, Stockholm Syndrome killed the Project Moon Enjoyer, and there were some scenes where I did not only tolerate Dawn, but actively laughed at her antics, like the beach volleyball scene, or the whole April Fool's thing with Faust Quixote and me crashing out and finding out that out of every possible swap, we got fucking Faust Quixote. Anyways, Canto 7. For the most part, I found Canto 7 to be overhyped. Then I got to the dungeon, and holy shit was the dungeon peak. Probably the best dungeon in Limbus Company so far. For clarity's sake, I did prefer Canto 6 Part 3 over Canto 7 Part 3, but I also think that Canto 7 peaked higher despite preferring Canto 6 personally, but I digress. Don Quixote, or Sancho, was genuinely great. Seeing her absolutely break down was peak, and the fight with the real Don Quixote in particular, the tail end of the fight, was absolute cinema. Although it wasn't my favorite fight personally, that honor goes to the Dulcinea fight, which is probably the most fun I've had with the Limbus combat mechanics to this day, even when fighting her in the Refraction Railway. Regardless, the concept of Don Quixote, the sinner, was fantastic. Having this falsified hero want nothing more than to show justice only as a means of satiating her own bloodthirst was amazing. The concept of her being a blood fiend and suffering oblivion was great. And going back to what I was saying about this peaking higher than Canto 6, I think this might be the highest individual peak in Project Moon for me. Being honest, Don Quixote is not my favorite Project Moon character. Angela, Roland, Faust, and Heathcliff are all pretty solidly above her for me, and are, quite frankly, 100 times more consistent. But Don Quixote's monologue towards the end of the canto is my favorite individual scene in Project Moon, so I'll leave it off with that. Allow me to regale thee, that in this adventure of mine, verily, I was blessed with a family of 12. Together we have braved and vanquished innumerable foes, our wills entwined as one. We were enactors of justice who have never forsaken hope, not even for a fleeting moment. And at last, I have come to understand what thou hast dreamed. Thus I now set off on another adventure, to seize that dream that twinkles so far, far above us. 'Tis high time I introduced myself to thee once again. Thou mayest know me as Quixote, or Don Quixote. Don, as a signifier of my nobility. I am a fixer, who shall sprint for the dream, side by side with thee. Alright, that is every piece of media that I consumed in the month of May 2025. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this month. I caught up to Limbus Company, which was huge. I'm still not caught up to Project Moon. I still do need to finish Distortion Detective, or catch up to Distortion Detective, I guess. Current priority was Punishing Gray Raven, but now it is Honkai Impact 3rd, which I have been binging the living shit out of. I've already done Elysian Realms 1 and 2. I did Chapter 26. I did 25 EX. I'm currently playing through 27. I was playing through a little bit of it right before I started recording this video. So yeah, Honkai Impact 3rd. Expect all of Elysian Realm and Thus Book Apocalypse on the next one. All the chapters in that. So it'll be a lot of Honkai Impact 3rd on the next one. Outside of that, Oto Tomare Season 2 will definitely be on there. And Grand Blue. Grand Blue we'll talk about as well. So those are the ones off the top of my head. Guys, I've been awake for a long time now. I'm sure I'm missing some, but those are the big ones for me. But I think that's about all that I have for you. So until next time, let's hope that the June media video doesn't take me so long to fucking make. But that's all for now. Take care, y'all.